You see that right there? I just grew this tiny baby tomato plant from seed in less than 4 days. Actually, to be precise, it only took 83 hours from seed to sprout. In this video, I'd like to explain how you can germinate your own tomato plants, just like this one, from seed, as soon as humanly possible, with a near 100% success rate. Full disclosure, right out of the gate, I used simple equipment to control the environment. Everything I used, I already owned. To get seeds to germinate reliably and fast, you have to closely control the environment. To do this, I used a kitchen bowl, warm tap water, a ceramic kitchen plate, a heating pad, the kind that you'd use on your back, and a thermostat power strip. Admittedly, most people don't already own a power strip like this, but I did buy mine a long time ago for around $45, and I've used it for lots of seed starting. The strip has easily paid for itself already. And these days, it costs even less than when I bought it. As for the seed, it helps to use fresh seeds. However, the seed I used for this plant was dated 3 years ago, November 2021. So don't worry if yours are a few years old. Assuming they were stored well, they should still pop just fine. The trick to fast germination, though, is to take your seed and soak it for 6 hours in warm tap water. I started with water that was probably 90 degrees or so from the tap, dropped the seed into the water, and then I just walked away, letting it sit out on the kitchen counter. Obviously, the water slowly cooled down to room temperature, which is fine. It just doesn't make any sense to soak the seed in cold water from the tap. Sure, that cold water will warm up, but it doesn't quite have the same benefit as starting warm and cooling down. While the seed was soaking, I prepped my seed starting mix. In this case, it was just a mixture of peat moss and a bit of worm cast seeds. You could use just about anything. I made sure to dampen the mixture just enough to be obviously damp, but not anywhere close to dripping wet. Like seriously, not close to dripping wet. I placed the mixture into my pot and then the pot onto the plate. I then put the plate on the heat mat, inserted the thermostat probe into the dirt, and I covered the whole thing up with an upside down kitchen bowl. Now, if you were starting a full tray of starts, which we do sometimes, then you have to have and use a full-size humidity dome to go over the tray. But not everyone needs to start that many plants at the same time. I rarely do. A bowl works just fine for just a few small starts over the course of a few days. The thermostat probe basically tracks the temperature of the growing medium, in this case, peat moss. I set the power strip to turn the heat mat on when the soil dropped to 79 degrees, and then turn the heat mat off once the soil got up to 81 degrees. Obviously, the goal here is to keep slightly damp soil at 80 degrees at all times. This works really well. Tomatoes will germinate just fine in warmer and cooler temperatures, but 80 degrees seems to be the sweet spot for speed for the majority of the varieties I've grown. Not to mention the fact that 80 degrees is just really simple to remember off the top of your head. As for the seed that is soaking, we want to saturate the seed as best as possible with warm water before putting it in the dirt. Submersion in water will saturate it much faster than placing a dry seed in damp soil. The soil will eventually saturate the seed, but it's slower, and that makes the germination time stretch out. That's something that we don't want. After a full 6-hour soak, and after my seed starting mix has fully warmed up to 80 degrees, I then used a chopstick to insert a single seed into a teeny tiny hole, and I covered it barely. At this point, you just put the bowl back over the top of everything and then wait about 3 days. Towards the end of the third day, you're going to find yourself peeking under the bowl often, waiting to see that first baby sprout. I didn't even have to water the seed once after I put it in the dirt. For me, once the seed was in the dirt, I saw my first sprout 77 hours later. Adding in the seed soaking time, that meant I went from a dry seed in the packet to a baby plant in just 83 hours. That's just shy of 3.5 days. From this point, I'll be putting this baby plant under the simplest grow light setup possible. That's going to keep it growing until it's mature enough to be potted up. For this tomato and many others that I grow every year, I'll be using my own handmade fertilizer blend instead of bagged compost or packaged fertilizers that you can buy at the store. You can see how I make that stuff in this video here on the screen, or in the video description you can see any of my other videos on growing better tomatoes.